Hi, everyone. Welcome to AGO Makes Summer Edition. I'm Tiana Roebuck. I'm the Associate Curator of Studio Programming and Learning at the Art Gallery of Ontario. Even though today we are coming to you from home, and if you can see, we're also coming to you from the Toronto Zoo, we do want to acknowledge that the Art Gallery of Ontario operates on land that is the territory of the Anishinaabe Mississauga Nation and is also the territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Toronto is also governed by a treaty between the federal government of Canada and the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe Nation. Toronto has always been a trading center for First Nations. So the program today is part of AGO Makes Summer Edition. It's a 4-week program. It's all free. It's on our website where we bring you exciting art projects, demonstrations, activities, videos, and live conversations like this, where we introduce you to the AGO collection and inspire you to be creative and make art at home. So today, without further ado, we have very, very special guests. We have Shawn Blackburn from the Toronto Zoo. He's the Learning and Engagement Coordinator. And we also have very, very special guests. We have Hudson, Humphrey, Juno, Nikita, and Aurora, I believe, as well as Shawn there. So a big hello to all of you. Shawn's going to teach us about the polar bears, and I'm going to show you some quick tips and tricks for how to capture them while you're drawing them in motion. So welcome, Shawn. Tell us a bit about yourself, about the zoo, about the amazing polar bears that are all around you right now.
All right, thanks, Tiana, and welcome everybody to the Toronto Zoo. My name is Shawn. I'm the coordinator here in our education branch at the zoo. And this is one of the things I get to do now all the time is host virtual events and invite people from the outside world to join us here at the zoo from the comfort of their own home. So today we're with our polar bears, and I'm surrounded right now by 4 of them. I'm going to flip my screen over so that you can see them the most, because I'm sure that's who you came to see. It wasn't necessarily to look at me. So hold on. And we can film in our polar bears. So we have them. They're viewable to us right now. These are our 2 males. So this is one of our males, which is either Hudson or Humphrey. It's hard for me to tell because they're big white bears and they look the same. But the other one's hiding way back there in their den. You can probably just see the butt, not head. That's a butt. Anyway, we have our 2 males, and then right next to me on the other side here, we have our 2 of our females.
Oh, wow.
And they're just having a little bit of a snooze in the morning here. That's one. And then the other one's up sleeping on the rock there as well.
That looks like a very nice morning.
Yeah. So the first thing, if you pay close attention, these are the females, okay? Now they look huge. The females are probably somewhere between 400 to 600 pounds. But then when we look at a male, much more massive. So males can get even bigger than that, going up into the 700 to 900 pound range. That's a huge, huge animal. And if this bear was to stand up on its back legs, it would be at least 7 feet tall, probably reaching up, which means it can go all the way up this glass, for instance, to reach up to the very top of that glass. So we have 4 here. We actually have 5. The mother of some of these bears is also here. She'll be in another exhibit that's way in the back, way back where that grassy space is, way over there.
And do those spaces all connect to do they all connect to each other? Like can one of them be in one area and they can just kind of graze and wander through to the other spots?
What you can't notice from this view is that there's a gully in between these 2 exhibits, and there's a fence in the middle of that gully as well. And so it's actually 2 exhibits that appear as if they're one, so it looks like they're connected. And then this is what we call our maternity den, or a small space that's just used if we have any births here, for instance, but this is also where the boys are staying today. It's all connected through their holding. So you can see the doors in the rock back there. Nice. So the bears, if they're going to switch, they go into their holding and then come out into a different exhibit. And all of these bears are on a rotation, so they all spend different times in different exhibits. And that's something we call behavioral enrichment. So when these 2 boys go out at any point in time in the main, do smell everything in there because it used to contain 2 girls. And that's behavioral enrichment for them. That's what they would do in the wild as well. They would search for each other.
Nice. So what else do you do to keep them, to keep them happy at the zoo? I guess, what do you do to make it feel like they're at home, like it's home for them? And yeah, because behavioral enrichment, that seems like a big thing, right? You want to keep them engaged and thinking and moving. So what kind of stuff do you do to keep them happy and keep them feeling good?
So at this zoo, the zoo is an accredited facility. So it's accredited through the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and they set really, really high standards. Our zoo voluntarily has joined and been accredited by them because we want to provide the highest standards for our animals at all times, and we do our best to actually exceed them. So one of those standards is that when we have polar bears such as this, who are living with us, we try to mimic as much of their natural behaviors and natural habitats as possible for them. So here at the zoo, polar bears get a lot of water. There's a little bit of water, but there's a whole huge amount of water out here. And that's because the scientific name for a polar bear is Ursus maritimus. And that basically means sea bear. Because of all the bears, polar bears are the ones that swim the best and the most often. They have to do that because what they eat in the wild is seals. And the only way to get those seals is to swim out into the Arctic Ocean and look for them. To go out onto that ice and find them. And so bears are, or at least polar bears are really, really good at swimming. Hopefully I can get a good shot of a paw here for you so you can see what they're using. So that's a polar bear paw. At home, what I want you to do is go in your kitchen later today and go get a frying pan. Frying pan's about the same size as this paw. And they use those things as paddles in the ocean to be able to push themselves forward. The neat thing about polar bears is they have so much of a fat layer on their body, which is about the thickness of their hair, their fat, and their skin all put together is about the thickness of all 4 of your fingers stacked on top of each other. Fat is buoyant, so fat floats. So when they have a layer of fat on their body, it actually helps them float on the top of the surface of the water. And then they can just doggy paddle with these huge feet of theirs.
That's almost like a built-in life preserver. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So we have a question here in our Q&A, and if anyone does have questions along the way, please feel free to put them in. So the question was, do polar bears need to be cold? So do they need to live somewhere where it's really cold? I think because people are assuming it's a polar bear, they live in the Arctic, but now they're living in Toronto. So what happens in the summer?
That's right. So polar bears are designed and adapted for living in the coldest places on the planet. What I'm going to do is show you, number one, how they're designed for that. So number one, or the first thing, as I told you, is that they have that fat layer. So fat is very insulating. When you put your winter coat on in the wintertime, you're adding layers of insulation to your own body. So the polar bears have their own winter coat that they can wear whenever they want, and then they can add to it by adding on more fat. And they get that from what they eat. On top of so the fur on top is actually 2 layers. And this is a good example on this bear right here. You can see the really coarse, thick stuff on top is very long hairs. Those are guard hairs. And when they get wet, they clump together like that. And they basically make the bear a kind of semi-waterproof. So it keeps the water from touching their skin, because dry skin stays warmer than wet skin does. And then if you look in that, kind of looks like it's shaved, but it's not. That's just where the bear has lost some of those guard hairs. That's their underfur. And that's another layer of insulation for them as well. So here in Toronto, our bears are adapted to this climate. They're okay with this. You can see one of the things that they do immediately is to lay in the shade. They'll stay in the shade. And then they'll rest during the hottest parts of the day as well. So they were out, they've already been active. They were active right before you guys joined. And now they're just taking a little break. These girls here will probably go swimming too, at some point in time, up into the big pool as well. And now you might think, well, it doesn't look like that bear has lost a lot of fur to be able to let the heat off. But what's neat to remember is that as humans, our ancestry takes us back to Africa. So humans have evolved to be able to deal with being in really hot climates. We're not adapted for living in Canada either, but over time, we started to develop adaptations to be able to stay here. And some of those adaptations are technological. We have coats and pants and stuff that we can wear as well. So the same thing happens in reverse. Animals like the polar bear can adapt to living in warmer climates over time. And these guys have adapted to that, both physiologically and behaviorally. Other animals that we have at the zoo as well, like our lions, for instance, who are from Africa, they've adapted to living in cold climates. They grow a little bit more fur in the wintertime, and their exposure to the cold allows them to be okay with it as well. So these guys are
Nice.
perfectly fine here.
They look very comfortable.
Yeah.
And I do love, that's like my favorite. I know they could be swatting away, maybe there's like a fly, but it reminds me of my cat. When my cat puts its hand over its eyes, it doesn't want the light to sleep, which is very cute. We do have a couple other questions in here, so I'm just going to throw them at you. Someone said,
Sure.
well, if they eat seals in the wild, what are they eating when they're at the zoo?
Sure. Here at the zoo, we have a full nutrition department. So we have a full staff of nutritionists, and that is their only role in the zoo, is they prepare the diets and meals and monitor the diets of the animals every single day. So our nutritionists here have figured out the best way to mimic what these bears would eat in the wild by studying what they eat in the wild and then trying to adapt what we give them here to kind of mimic that. So what we have at the zoo is something called a carnivore diet. Polar bears are the most carnivorous of all the bears. They eat meat most of the time compared to other bears. And so we tried to give them as much meat as possible. The meat that they'll get will be a little bit higher fatty content, because in the wild, when they eat the seals, they're not actually eating all of the seal. If they catch a seal, they'll eat the skin and the fat layer mostly, and they'll probably leave a lot of the meat behind, the muscle meat behind, because it's not as calorie dense. And they want as many calories as possible to help them survive in the Arctic. So here we'll give them a fatty kind of carnivore diet, which is ground up meat that has different things added to it, just to make sure that they get all the supplementation and the nutrition that they need. Now, something that's a little bit different here than is in the wild is that these bears get, again, enrichment. So they get food enrichment as well. So not only do they get their daily meat content that they need, but they're also given other things like vegetables, believe it or not. So I don't know if I can see any vegetables out here, but I got one thing better for you. And that poop. And if you look close, you can see there's some green in that poop. And that's because they got some lettuce and kale yesterday. And why do we give them that? And that's just something for them to, the same reason you don't like eating the same food every single day if you didn't have to. If you've got some variety in your food, it's stimulating. So we do the same thing here. And it is known that these bears, even though they're highly carnivorous, they will eat vegetation if they find it, and if they have to in the wild as well.
Nice. You got to get your fiber. So that's
That's right.
great. There's two questions that go together from the Q&A. One is how old are these polar bears, if you know? And then with that, it's what's the typical lifespan of a polar bear?
Sure. So our two boys, Hudson and Humphrey, were the first of the two of the three cubs that were born recently. So they're 7 and 9 years old. And then over here, we have Juno. Juno's 5.
Nice.
He just turned 5 in June. And typically in the wild, polar bears' maximum lifespan is somewhere close to 25 years. In captivity or inside zoos or any of the places that you might find polar bears, they can live a little bit longer than 25, but it seems that 25 is the average number. Here at this zoo and at accredited zoos, they get the greatest healthcare possible. So we have a full team, like I said, of nutritionists who are monitoring their diet all the time. We also have a full team of veterinary staff as well, who are monitoring the health of the bears at all times as well. So they get the best here at the zoo.
Nice. And someone put here in the Q&A that they find it interesting that polar bears have black tongues, and they're saying that they have black tongues like giraffes. And I didn't know that. Is that true? I guess, is that true? And then, you know, I guess what other interesting facts are there about the polar bear that we might not know?
Yep, they do have spotted little dark spots on their tongues. I'm not exactly sure why they would have that, but one of the ways that we can actually tell bears apart in the wild is by the different spot patterns on their tongues. If they actually have to catch them to do anything with the bears in the wild, they can tell that way because it's unique, like a fingerprint. Giraffes do have a really, really dark tongue as well, but it's believed, for them at least, because they're standing out in the direct sunlight all the time and their tongue is outside of their mouth more than it's inside of their mouth while they're eating, it's kind of a sunscreen just to make sure their tongue doesn't get sunburned. For the polar bear, probably not a problem. The neat thing about the polar bear, you can see on the muzzle that their skin is actually really, really dark. And it's only their hair that is color. If you were to comb down through all of this fur, well, number one, I would probably be killed. But number two, I would find that all of the skin underneath is really, really dark color.
Nice.
And if the girls go swimming, we'll be able to see it for sure.
So we have a question from Scarlett here, and actually Scarlett had a very similar question to me. So I'm going to kind of ask them together. Scarlett's question was, why do polar bears sometimes stand on their hind legs? And what my question was going to be was, at the AGO, we have a really lovely collection of Inuit carvings, soapstone carvings, that are usually called dancing bears. And it shows a bear sort of dancing up on their hind legs, but our dancing bears are usually on one foot. So Scarlett's question is sort of, why do they stand up like that? And mine would be, do bears actually dance like that? Do they ever go on one foot?
Sure, yeah, good question, Scarlett. So the answer to that is that these guys do stand on their hind legs sometimes, and there's a purpose behind it. So when they're out in the Arctic is a big barren landscape. It's really, really flat. There's not a lot of stuff in the way for you to see long distance. And so what these bears do, like I said, the males can get up to 7 feet tall if they stand up, is they'll go to a mound, like some kind of little bit higher ground like that. They'll go to the top of it and then they'll stand up on their back legs, and that gets their head as high up into the air as possible. That allows them to be able to see the furthest away. So these bears, their best senses of the 5 senses is their smell and their sight. They can see very far away. And what they're looking for and watching for is if a whale or a walrus or a seal or any kind of thing that it might want to eat pops its head out of the ice and breathes, it shoots a spray up into the air while it's clearing its nostrils. So the bears are watching for that. And if they see that, then they know where the food's going to be, so they'll go towards it. Polar bears also have a really excellent sense of smell. They can smell seals over 1.5 kilometers away, and they can tell where that seal is hiding from that far of a distance. By getting your nose way up in the air, you can catch more of the wind that blows across the Arctic. As for whether they stand on one foot or not, I don't know if they do too often, except to try and catch their own balance. But they will stand up on extra ledges or something that they can support themselves on to get a little bit higher. And sometimes there's only room for 1 foot on that ledge.
Nice. So if you want to see the stretching bears or the reaching bears or the standing bears, you go to the zoo. And if you want to see the dancing bears, you come to the AGO for the dancing bears. A little different. So we have a couple more questions here. One was, why are polar bears important? And that kind of goes along with, there's another question from Naomi here about what's the zoo's plan for how to protect polar bears, whether it's in the wild or it's at the zoo.
So these bears and polar bears are important because they're keystone species. What that means is they're the main predator that exists in the Arctic on land. And that makes them important because they're the ones who maintain the populations of the other animals around them that they might prey upon. If there was no predator to prey upon the seals in the Arctic, then the seals would just keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying until they used up all of the resources in the entire area. And if they used up all the resources in the entire area, that would cause the seals populations to eventually collapse. So believe it or not, the prey needs the predator as much as the predator needs the prey in some situations. So polar bears are that keystone predator species up in the Arctic. What the zoo is doing is we've partnered with several universities and other research centers that work with polar bears, such as Polar Bears International. And we are allowing them access basically to our bears to be able to get information and do research on them so that we can get benchmarks or basic data about the polar bears, their physiology, and any of the chemistry inside their bodies, things like that we can get from our bears voluntarily, and then use that information to be able to study the bears in the wild. So one of the main studies that we've been working recently with outside organizations that deal with polar bears is we're studying the fat layer of bears themselves and trying to determine what can that fat layer tell us about the bears. So what we can do is take a sample of the fat layer from our bears, and then we know exactly what they ate every day, and we can compare the fat layer that they have and the chemistry of it with what we know they ate for that day. We can figure out the benchmarks and know this much meat equals this much fat equals this consistency of fat. So then when someone goes into the wild to study wild bears, they can get a sample of fat from the bear by shooting a little hollow dart into the bear. The dart hits the bear, it takes a little fat sample and it falls off. The person who's studying can then go pick up that dart, bring it back to their lab. They can analyze the fat content and then compare that information to what we've got for them from here. And then they can tell just by a little piece of fat from this huge 600-pound, 700-pound animal, how healthy that animal is. And then we can be able to tell how healthy are the polar bears in general.
Nice. So we have another question here, which is interesting. It's sort of a challenge. It's, would a polar bear win a battle with a brown bear? Or would a brown bear win?
Questions.
Yes, if you put...
There's always animal A versus animal B. So what's neat about brown bears is brown bears are the ancient ancestor of the polar bear. And they're close enough in genetic linkage, like similarity, that they are able to breed with each other and their babies would survive. And that's how you can tell when animals are related to each other genetically. So the Kodiak or our Alaskan brown bears are very, very related to polar bears. Polar bears are believed to be an offshoot of the brown bear that happened between 400 and 150,000 years ago. Who would win in the fight? It comes down to where they might be fighting. These guys might win in the Arctic, but the brown bear might win in the Yukon or down south, further south in southern Alaska or something. It comes down to what you're adapted to. And
Nice.
These guys are built for the Arctic.
So I think we're going to do one last question here, and then we're going to try some sketching. We're going to see if we can sketch the polar bears and learn how to do that from home. So the last question from the Q&A is from Caden. It's, how long can a polar bear hold their breath underwater?
A good question. So polar bears are similar to us. We have lungs that are built for our size. They have lungs that are built for their size. So the ability to hold their breath is similar to us as well. An average human can hold their breath for anywhere between 1 to 4 minutes. And the polar bears hold their breath from anywhere between 1 to 6 minutes as well. When they swim, like I said, they usually float on the surface and don't have to really worry about diving too deep.
Nice. That's great. Well, I hope everyone at home is enjoying looking at the polar bears as much as I am. We did have a question about seeing the poop, and do they poop,
sure.
And what does the poop look like? So I feel like just a quick, perfect, great. Now we're satisfied. We've seen the bears, we've seen the poop.
Everyone can check that off the bucket list. We've seen polar bear poop.
Done. So I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you some quick tips and tricks, how you can capture animals really simply. It's doing something called gesture drawing. So this can be when you're at the zoo, if you're at home with your pets, if you're looking out your window at, animals, dogs walking by, even people walking by too, right? We're all animals. And we're going to see if we can draw these polar bears together. So the first thing is just a one line about what is gesture drawing. So it's a very fast drawing. It's done in, 5-10 seconds. Maybe the longest it would be is 1 minute. So you're not capturing any details. You're just trying to get the essence of what you see. Sometimes I think of it like trying to capture the main idea of what you're seeing. And really important to remember, you're trying to capture something from your point of view. We could always take a picture if we want it to look exactly like what it looks like in real life, but we're way more interested in what your version of this polar bear is. So Shawn and everyone at home, if you've got some paper with you and anything to draw with, whatever you like, could be a pen, marker, crayons, pencil, whatever you have. And I think we're gonna do, let's just do like 30 seconds quick. I've got, for me today, I've got some paper and I've got a Sharpie marker. Let's just do a warm up. We'll do like 30-second warm up. So I'm gonna say, why don't we start with drawing some swirls. So if you wanna just do some swirls on your paper, this is just to loosen up your hand. And I'm gonna give you another tip as we go. A lot of people draw with their wrist like this, and that's fine, but you can get tired after a while. You might want to try drawing from your shoulders, so you're actually moving your whole arm. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw some swirls, and they kind of look like that. And then I'm going to draw some zigzags. If you want to try drawing some zigzags at home, just really think of drawing from your shoulder, loosening up that arm. And then the last thing we're gonna warm up with is drawing some fur. So I just think of them as like quick little lines, like pretend you're drawing polar bear fur. So it just almost looks like rain too, if you're drawing rain. Okay, I think that feels good to me. That's what my sort of warm up looks like, a big sheet of lots of crazy scribbles. So the first drawing thing that we're going to try today is how to capture the main line of the polar bear. So we're going to take a look at an image. It's an image of the polar bears, and you can see, I think we're going to go, oh, there we go. So you can have a look at the polar bear and you can see if you were going to try to capture it, you know, and you only had 4 lines, what would they be? So I'd probably start with that first line, right? Around the head, the back, and around the foot. If I could only do, let's say, 2 or 3 more lines, I'd probably try to capture that other leg, right? Keep it simple. I'm not going for details. I'm not trying to get the eyes or the nose or the mouth. It's really just the main basic lines. So if you have a look at that, I think I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I'm going to show you one of our artist instructors. His name is Jason Deary. He did some really great samples. So let's see if I can show you what his drawings look like when I showed him that picture. So it looks like very similar to what we saw. It's sort of a line along the back, and then those really simple lines for the legs. So that is a gesture drawing. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. So some people get intimidated when they're drawing people or animals, but that's as simple as it can be. Just capture the main essence of the bear. So I'd say he had 10 seconds to do that. When I gave him a little more time, like maybe 30, 40 seconds, then he just added a couple more shapes. So you can see he added a circle in there, he added some sausages for the legs, and he ended up with a really nice gesture drawing, general gesture drawing of the bear. So let's look at a still image together. It's a little easier sometimes to learn if the bear is still. So why don't we look at this one together? And I'd say if everyone at home, if you want to take maybe 10 seconds. Let's do 10 seconds and let's see what we're going to capture. For myself, I'm probably going to try to do a circle, maybe an oval for that head, and a line or 2 for the back and the legs. So if you're ready at home, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, go for it. So I'm drawing that head. Going to add some ears on there. Going to do the back, going to come around for one leg. And then coming around for another leg. And that's it. That's as quick as it can be. So that's what my quick gesture drawing of that bear looked like. And then if you had, let's say, oh yeah, Shawn, let's look at yours. Oh, that looks so great. So really similar. You got that circle for the head, the circle for the ears, and that kind of nice gesture for the back, and then the 2 legs. Lovely. And now I'll say, let's give ourselves maybe another 10 seconds to keep working on that same one. So let's go back and add some more shapes and some more detail. So I'm going to just do a little more on the back. I might start thinking about where the eyes are, where the mouth is, maybe the toes. Great. And then same thing, we can kind of show, I started roughing in a little face there. So again, remember with gesture drawing, oh, beautiful. That's gorgeous. So with gesture drawing, you're not trying to capture like every piece of fur. It's just kind of the essence or the feeling of the animal. So we're going to do one more quick example. And let's just see. if I can show you, here's another fun trick. If you want to try to capture an animal really in motion, it can be hard if they're moving fast, right? Like, how do you do the ears and the face and the arms and everything when they're just kind of pacing or swimming back and forth? So sometimes I like to think of just capturing the line of action. It's not even really the form of the animal, in this case, the polar bear, it's just the line of action. So here's an example that I did. I think I can show you. Oh, I'm not sure if you guys can see me, but hopefully you can see me. It's just really quick, and then we're going to show you a really cool video. So you can see down here, I had a cat at home, and my cat was sitting, and then my cat jumped up onto the couch, and then spun around, jumped down to the floor, and then ran back and forth because they were chasing something. So if you can see, it's really not capturing the shape of the cat so much, it's more the line of action of where they're going. So let's look at a clip of the polar bear swimming. And then same thing, let's grab your paper, let's grab a marker, and let's just try to make one long continuous line. So you put that sort of marker down and just trace where the bear is going, trace where the bear is swimming. So right now I see a tush, so I'm gonna draw a polar bear tush with a little tail, trying to capture that essence using that main line. And then when it starts to swim, let's see if we can capture that line of action. Whoa. And then when it stops for a second, you can think about your main line, try to capture the face, or even there you could try to capture some feet. But when it's really moving quickly, just think about drawing a line. Just like relax your arm, draw that line, super fun. Ooh, nice shot of the face. Nice legs there too. Awesome. This could be really relaxing too, right? Because you're not so worried about trying to make it look exactly like what you're seeing. It's just capturing that movement of the bear. Awesome. So let's see. Shawn, what did you do? Oh, cool. Nice. I can totally see the path of the bear too, starting at one side and then working its way around and coming back. So mine is infinitely more scribblable. And you can see moments where the bear stopped, but it's really just that swirl of action. So to me, I feel like that's one of the most fun ways to try to capture animals using gesture drawing. And I would highly recommend, if you have pets at home, you want to look out your window, or if you want to head over to the Toronto Zoo, make sure that you bring, you know, some markers, some crayons with you, bring some paper with you, and you can have fun trying that out. So we're just about at the end for today. I want to do a huge thank you to the Toronto Zoo, to Shawn, to Hudson, Humphrey, Juno, Nikita, to Aurora for joining us today. And Shawn, just before we go, is there anything that you want to share with the kids at home? So any last words?
Sure. I just want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to be here, to be able to draw along with you. The bears, trust me, we're excited to see us, despite their sleep. Oh, there you go. And just to let everybody know that this is one version of how you can come and visit the zoo now, because we have many virtual programs that are available for anyone, from families all the way up to full businesses can come and visit the zoo virtually now. More information is available on our webpage, torontozoo.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shawn. And for everybody watching, make sure to check out this week's AGO Make Summer Edition on our website. You'll find this video so you can watch it again if you like. You'll also find other great art projects like how to make land art, how to draw the sun, how to make really cool, unique maps of your neighborhood. Next week, our special guest will be the head astronomer from the Ontario Science Centre. We're going to be looking at the night sky and learning how to make a galaxy from home. Also, stay tuned for our children and youth and family online courses, which will be launching this fall. Of course, don't forget to share the art that you make with us. Please post it online and hashtag it with AGO Makes, and we can't wait to see what you make. So have fun getting creative at home. See you again soon, and a big goodbye to Shawn, the Toronto Zoo, and the polar bears. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.